Direction over purpose, unsticking your midlife restlessness. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a feeling that hits so many people, particularly men navigating their 50s. You've been working, providing, doing literally all the things you're supposed to do, and then suddenly, bam, you feel this creeping, heavy sensation of being profoundly, completely stuck. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into a genuinely fascinating framework designed to finally break you out of that rut. You probably know the feeling, right? You hit that wall of restlessness. You've built a life, you've got a career, but the daily grind suddenly just feels kind of hollow. And what's the number one piece of advice society hands you when you feel like this? Go find your purpose. You hear it in every self-help book, every motivational speech on the internet. If you're feeling restless, clearly you just need to go discover your grand, singular reason for existing. It sounds incredibly profound, but for so many people on the receiving end of this advice, it's actually deeply frustrating. Instead of feeling liberated, they end up feeling even more lost. Honestly, it's like being handed a 50-pound backpack when you're already totally exhausted from the hike. So let's really stop and think about this, because this is exactly where the conventional wisdom starts to crack. What if that classic, age-old advice is actually making the problem worse? Do we have this completely backwards? Well, the framework we're exploring today argues that we absolutely do. We are diagnosing this midlife stagnation totally incorrectly, and because of that, the standard prescription is actually the very thing keeping us paralyzed. Section 1. The pressure of purpose. Telling someone who is already feeling adrift that they need to find their one, true, overarching purpose, you aren't giving them a tool, you're handing them a massive, paralyzing weight. The pressure to figure out this perfect destiny causes people to just completely freeze up. The task feels way too impossibly large. But here is the absolute crucial reality check. You are not a blank slate. By the time you reach this stage of life, you have decades of lived experience. You aren't starting from zero. You have 30 years of knowing exactly what kind of work you absolutely hate doing, which, by the way, is an incredibly powerful filter. You've got refined skills, deeply held core values, and a strong sense of what genuinely matters to you, even if the big grand picture feels a little foggy right now. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, there's an unnamed purpose just waiting to be brought to the surface. What's missing isn't purpose, it's a path forward. Let that sink in for a second. The underlying drive, the core of what you actually care about, is already in there, buried beneath all the exhaustion and the restlessness. You don't need to go on some mystical 6-month retreat to a mountaintop to find it. You already own it. You just need a practical way to move toward it so you can finally put a name to it. Moving on to Section 2, Destination versus Direction. If you can really internalize the difference between these two concepts, you can completely change how you approach your life. Think of purpose as a highly specific destination on a map. It's an exact GPS coordinate. But if you haven't figured out where that destination is yet, how can you possibly walk toward it? You can't. You'll just stand in the driveway, staring blankly at the map, completely paralyzed. Direction, on the other hand, is entirely different. Direction is holding a compass. It's simply which way you are facing right now, north, south, east, west. You do not need the final exact address of the hotel you're sleeping at tonight to simply point your car north and start driving. So since you can't start walking towards a final destination you haven't even figured out yet, you have to radically shift your goal. You walk towards a rough idea. Think about how liberating that is. You don't need a 10-year master plan. You don't need a perfectly collaged vision board detailing your ultimate destiny. You just point yourself in a direction where you think you might want to end up. Something like, I want to do more teaching, or I want to work with my hands, or I want to be outdoors. And then you just start moving. It completely removes that immense, suffocating pressure of having everything perfectly figured out. Section 3. The Trap of Waiting. Finding your purpose sounds like very sage and wise advice. It looks absolutely fantastic on a bumper sticker. But following that advice is exactly what keeps so many highly capable people trapped in totally stuck inaction. Why? Because it implies that you need to do all of the thinking up front. It's the armchair philosopher trap. You end up buying a dozen self-help books, doing endless journaling, and just sitting in your armchair waiting for a lightning bolt epiphany to strike before you make a single move. You convince yourself you're preparing, but really, you're just waiting, and the epiphany rarely comes to someone who is just sitting still. We've got to completely redefine this. Purpose is not something you think your way into. It's something uncovered by moving towards it. Purpose is an action verb here. You don't deduce it through sheer intellectual willpower. You step into it. Real clarity doesn't come from a sudden light bulb moment in a quiet room. It comes from friction with the real world. Section 4. Action uncovers clarity. Remember, at this stage of your life, that inner drive is rarely missing. It's just fuzzy. Think of it like looking through a camera with a manual focus lens. The picture is blurry, right? But you can't just stare harder at the blurry image and expect it to magically sharpen itself. You physically have to reach out and twist the dial on the lens. Taking action is how you twist the dial. You literally have to interact with the world to bring the picture into focus. Moving forward does 3 absolutely critical things that sitting still simply cannot do. First, movement allows you to test the feeling. Let's say your rough direction is, I want to mentor younger people. So you take an action. You volunteer to mentor a junior colleague for just one afternoon. How did it feel? Did it totally drain you or did it energize you? Second, you validate the path. If it energizes you, you commit to doing it once a week. You validate that, yes, this is a good direction for sure. And third, you sharpen the outcome. By actually doing the mentoring, you might realize, oh, I don't just want to mentor generally. I specifically want to teach financial literacy to high schoolers. You take that blurry, unnamed purpose and you slowly bring it into high-definition focus through trial and error. Now look, it's true that some people are born knowing exactly what they want to do. They've had a crystal clear calling since they were 20 years old. They move straight toward it, and honestly, that is fantastic for them. But for the vast majority of us navigating that messy midlife transition, that is just not how the human brain works. For most of us, purpose gets uncovered by moving, not the other way around. And finally, Section 5, taking your first step. So how do we actually put this framework into immediate practice? It comes down to a precise 4-part scientific method for your life. Step 1, pick a meaningful direction. Not just any random direction, but a rough heading that aligns with your core values, something like community building or creative writing. Step 2, take a small step. Please, don't quit your job and move to a cabin in the woods. Just take a weekend writing class or go to one neighborhood association meeting. Make it small and low stakes. Step 3, notice how you feel. Pay close attention to your physical and mental response. Did that step spark a little bit of joy, or did it feel like an absolute chore? Step 4, adjust until it feels right. If the writing class was miserable, pivot, iterate, adjust your trajectory a few degrees and take another small step. Just test and adjust. If you've been pacing the floor, endlessly waiting to find your perfect purpose before you make a life change, the best thing you can possibly do for yourself right now is to just stop waiting. You already know way more than you think you do. You have an incredibly calibrated internal compass, built from decades of success, failure, relationships, and hard work. Trust that internal compass. You are deeply equipped for this next phase. You just need to give yourself permission to start walking without a map. I want to leave you with one final provocative thought today. The journey to naming your purpose doesn't begin with a grand revelation. It begins with a single exploratory action. Stop waiting for the perfect answer to just drop out of the sky. Instead, grab your compass, point yourself towards something that matters, and ask yourself, what is your next small step?